The perspective of the camera, and this boils down to where do I place my camera, but also from which perspective are we looking at the subject or the scene. Let's start with the very basics again, and you've probably heard about this already. In terms of height, there are generally 3 standpoints. The first one is eye height, just having the camera at the same height of your subject, and this means that we don't have to tilt up or down. A very neutral shot, without too many story behind it. We level with the character and we don't emphasize anything or pull any attention to something specific. So it's going to be up to other composition techniques to make up for that. The second is low perspective. We're going to look up to the subject, which now appears to be bigger. Not only visually, but also story-wise, the person shows confidence because of that. We are literally looking up to Lucia. Usually, the sky is going to take up a larger part of the shot and less of the environment, which means that we are drawn more to the talent. And the third one is high perspective. This is the opposite. We look down on the talent. We're making Lucia smaller, more vulnerable, more of the ground is visible, which also acts upon that. Now, when shooting architecture or nature, you're usually always at low perspective. Here it's usually a matter of distance. The closer you get to a tree, for instance, the more you need to tilt up, and thus the tree seems bigger and more imposing. So this shot here feels way different than if we take distance from that tree. Now, when it comes down to your composition, we could do some different things. For instance, when filming from a high perspective, making your subject small, we could place the eyes of the talent onto the upper guide of the rule of thirds. But we could also place it on the bottom guide, and this is considered a wrong composition as we're creating too much headspace. But for a storytelling reason, it could work. We are suppressing the character even more by framing her on the bottom, and we could even pan to also frame her on the side of the frame, revealing more of the surrounding, making that surrounding more prominent and the character smaller. So you can see how we can leverage a wrong composition to a better storytelling. The same technique can also be done with a low perspective. By framing the subject on the bottom guideline or in the center of the shot, we're giving more space to the surrounding. So not only Lorenzo now is impressive, the surrounding is even more. This shot is not only about the character, but also around the environment. Now, interesting is that we can actually make our subject feel small from a low perspective by the kind of composition that we're creating. The trees in the back take up so much in the framing that Lorenzo seems very small against it. But he shows confidence because we're filming from a low angle, something that we don't get when filming from above. So that is in essence the height of the camera and how we can leverage it towards a storytelling composition. The second part of perspective is focal length, or in other words, how much do we zoom in or zoom out with your lens. Think about the following. You can zoom out, go wide angle, and stand close to the subject. Or you can zoom in, go tele, and stand far away from the subject. Both have a similar framing, but look very different from each other. In the wide-angle shot, we see a lot more of the background, and that's because our lens opens up as we zoom out. What I love about the wide angle is how it adds a lot more of the environment to the shot. This is going to be easier when adding more elements to your framing, to align them to a composition rule. Now, for instance, here we have a foreground element in the shot, and they are laid out on the golden ratio. And this goes a lot easier on a wide-angle lens, plus the environment also gets more prominent and plays a bigger role in the shot. When zooming in or going tele, the perspective contracts and we see less of the environment. We're isolating the subject a lot more, and since our depth of field becomes more shallow, this is great to work with foreground objects or an over-shoulder shot. Anything where the focus lays on the subject and the environment plays less of a role. And in terms of editing, this is something great to play with. We could introduce an environment in a wide-angle shot, perhaps shoot this a little bit from below and place the character on the bottom. She's exploring the surrounding, and then we cut to a tele shot of a close-up of her, because now she might be saying something, or we want to show her emotion as a reaction to the environment, and we could even bring the camera a little bit up, making her slightly smaller and opposite to what she's seeing and her reaction to it. So, one choice in terms of camera perspective is never the case. It's always a combination of these to create an interesting edit. But do think about the story that you're trying to tell with each shot that you take. Thanks for watching.